Don't have the list in front of me. Sorry about that. Can I just draw
Or
write
just
attendance
want to
down?
note attendance for the record?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to invite everyone to join us in rising for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Justice for all.
Members of the EDA, members of the Downtown Working Group, we'd like to welcome you to our first in-person meeting, and feels a little bit like the first day of school. So we will get through logistics and all of our technology. We are streaming live, and our rules for remote attendance do require all committee members to be present, all EDA members to be present, but allows for remote participation of community members, staff, or other interested parties. And so this will be our first test at the EDA level of our hybrid model. And it's good to see you all. I'm glad we're able to be here in person. Dan, do you want to get us started this evening on our agenda and hand off to our guests?
Absolutely. President, members of the EDA, tonight we have an update from HKGI. They're here with a presentation they've been doing a lot of the deep data dive in terms of our downtown, and we have an update, or they have an update for the EDA on that, as well as an opportunity for the EDA to ask, or excuse me, the downtown committee to ask questions of the planning group. So with that, I just, without further ado, kick it over to Bruce to have him start the presentation.
All right, thank you, Dan. Hi, everyone. I was mentioning to the mayor that it's also my first in-person presentation in council chambers in a year and whatever. So this is exciting. Hopefully it doesn't feel too much like you're my guinea pigs on this process. So we want to give you an update. I also want to introduce my colleague, Rita Trapp. Rita is here. She's a urban planner. And so she and I are collaborating closely on this effort. So as you know, we are focused on, and Dan, is this?
I'll do it right now.
Okay. I'll pause.
Oh. There we go.
All right, good deal. So as you know, we are launching into a downtown plan for Forest Lake, and really finding some interesting things and fascinating history, and looking a lot at the analysis aspects of the downtown district. This is just a diagram that shows the study area. And we're really focused in on the core of downtown, and looking at the connections between that core area and the surrounding neighborhoods and the community itself. So you've seen this diagram before, or those of you who are involved in the process have seen this, but this is a diagram of our planning process. And we have essentially 8 steps. Each builds on the one before it. And we are in the process of really looking at steps 1, 2, and 3, mostly in step 2, and that's what I'm going to present this evening. So we have gone through the process of refining the scope and the project schedule. We've had a project kickoff as well as a kickoff tour, and we're becoming more and more familiar with the downtown district, as I'm sure all of you already are. We've been collecting a lot of background data, both for the district itself and the context, whether it's the community or communities that are beyond the borders of Forest Lake. And we've been conducting a lot of the analysis and synthesizing the data and the information that we've been collecting into something that really tells a story for us and for you, and as a way for us to gain critique and feedback from all of you as you take a look at that. So that's most of what I'll be presenting. Into something that really tells a story for us and for you.
Sorry, we were live on YouTube now. It was the feedback from YouTube. Sorry about that.
Okay, great, thanks, Dan. We've also initiated community engagement activities. So maybe you visited the website. We have some engagement that's directly on the webpage for the downtown plan, and I encourage all of you to take a look at it through the city's website. So you'll see some ways that you all can leave comments, as well as community members can leave comments as well. So that's one way. We're also initiating stakeholder interviews. Some of them are going to be individual interviews and some will be group interviews or focus groups. So we're getting those underway as well. And we're looking forward to upcoming community events. So Arts in the Park and other events that we're going to be attending and having a booth and gaining input from the community members as part of that effort. So the next stage that we're just starting to dig into is stage 3, what influences will cause downtown to change. And there we're going to be looking at the stakeholder interviews I talked about, as well as really focusing on market trends. What's happening in this region in the way of downtowns and the kinds of things that would affect your downtown, as well as around the country and the kinds of market trends that are important for us to keep an eye on. So the next update, we're expecting to come back to you in July. That will be a more solidified synopsis, again, recap of the analysis that you're going to see preliminary work on this evening, and then also the trends component and the results from some of the stakeholder interviews as well, or I should say themes out of those interviews. So we're going to be looking at analysis, and analysis is really about understanding what downtown is today, because it is the foundation and the baseline for how we think about recommendations and ideas for the tomorrow of downtown Forest Lake. We think of these components as layers of analysis. Each one really builds upon the others, and they become layers in the platform or the foundation upon which we launch into design ideas and concept alternatives. So within those layers, there are 3 categories that we've identified and are working on. One is public realm, and within the public realm, it's all those public spaces that are accessible to all. There are green spaces and nature, sidewalks and trails in the community, and pedestrian amenities. And then there are private properties, essentially everything that's not public. And there's the real estate, obviously the businesses that are operating within that real estate, and the visitor base that is visiting and coming into the downtown district. Obviously, in your downtown, you also have residential uses that are a really important aspect of private development and private properties. So you're going to see some information on that as well. And then downtown activation is the third. So those are really only a couple of categories as we're looking at them from an analysis standpoint, and that's attractions, what brings people to downtown, and the parking component. So within those layers, the public realm, there are a number of, the way we've organized this, some kind of key messages or things that we think are really important to focus in on. And within the public realm, or those shared spaces within downtown, these are the things that we've identified as kind of key critical aspects of analysis. Connected and cared for public green spaces will pay dividends. Nature, the forest and the lake, in your case, is a community treasure to be accessed and enjoyed by all. A network of social sidewalks is essential. A robust bike network is a major bonus. And finally, pedestrian comfort and security are baseline essentials. So I'm going to run through some of those components. This first diagram really focuses in on a couple of key things. One is that Memorial Park, right at the center of your downtown, is within 1,000 feet or a 5-minute walk from all of the district. That becomes really critical. I think that aspect of having your primary amenity at the center of what's going on downtown is really critical to how we look at the downtown, how you think about the downtown, and how others experience this place. I want to highlight, though, the areas that you see in kind of the tan color represent spaces, open spaces surrounding Memorial Park. Some of them are parking areas, some of them are street corridors, but what you can notice that I think is really prominent that I want you to look at and pay attention to is that from Highway 61 or Lake Street, there is only really a very narrow corridor, and that's at Broadway, where folks who are traveling through or the community coming into the district have a shot at Memorial Park and at the lake. And that becomes a really critical factor in the way we think about and strategize the future. So I just wanted to highlight that. And you'll see other analysis diagrams that touch on that topic as well. So this next diagram looks at where we have connectivity or gaps in connectivity that become really critical, again, in how people experience the downtown district. So those areas in tan or yellowish are sidewalk gaps. So areas where we have lack of connectivity from a sidewalk or pedestrian standpoint through the downtown area. And then I want to highlight this bike network gap. That's that area that you see in blue, because you have this fantastic amenity of the bike trail, the Heartland Trail, traveling through, or excuse me, the Hardwood Creek Trail, traveling through the downtown core. But once people try to get off of that trail on their bike, there are very few bike amenities or connections from the trail into the district. And that's important in trying to think of that trail corridor as an economic driver, as an experiential component to the way people come into downtown Forest Lake. That becomes really important. So I just wanted to highlight that. The next one, connected and cared for public green spaces will pay dividends. So this is an article of a magazine article from a number of years ago that talks about tree canopy within downtown areas and the importance of tree canopy. And we can think of it in the downtown core, which is really more common for us to do as we think about street trees on Main Street, and that's really important also. But what is also really critical is the ribbons of street trees that connect surrounding neighborhoods into the core. Because your greatest fodder for getting people deeper and more deeply engaged in downtown really is from these surrounding neighborhoods, either by bike or by walk. And street trees become a really important critical factor in making those connections. So this diagram identifies, kind of in the lighter green again, Memorial Park and the central nature of that. And then the darkest green represents where there is tree canopy within the downtown district. And you can see that there is good tree canopy around some of the perimeter, but if you squint and look at the diagram, you can see there is a lack of tree canopy in the center. And one of the strategies certainly would be for us to think about how we enhance tree canopy leading from the residential neighborhood districts surrounding downtown deeply into the core. And then also from where people park, which you'll see a diagram of a little bit later in the presentation. But how do we think about the experience of people going from their cars, leaving their cars, going on foot to retail destinations through downtown or Memorial Park? And those connections of tree canopy become a really important factor in the overall comfort and enjoyment of the district. This next one talks about walk score and walking facilities within the downtown district. There are essentially 6 points or 6 spots, 6 street corridors where people can access downtown from the surrounding neighborhoods. And that becomes, again, that really important factor in how you're creating this connection between surrounding neighborhoods and the downtown. Within the downtown area, the sidewalk network is pretty strong. It's really quite good. And I think what the plan, may begin to explore is how there become better gateways and connections into the district, and maybe how we expand some of the points of connectivity, again, between the surroundings and the downtown core. So there are a couple of miles of sidewalks within the district, which is, again, I think pretty good. You have good amounts of sidewalks in some of the cases of newer development on both sides of that development, both the front and what might be considered the back edge. So that's an important component. Along with whether or not sidewalks exist, this notion of social sidewalks is something that you're probably going to hear more of from me. It becomes a really important feature in the way people use pedestrian infrastructure in order to create a more social atmosphere. In the sidewalk connections, again, between neighborhoods and into the district, that 5-foot minimum is really a critical factor. Because when people have to walk alone, especially if they're with someone else, if they have to walk kind of one in front of the other because the sidewalk is too narrow to walk two abreast, it really has an impact on the way people perceive the space. So having a 5-foot sidewalk, again, as a baseline minimum becomes a really critical factor in the way we think about the infrastructure for pedestrians. Obviously, Main Street is going to have broader sidewalks, but you have so many instances where there are double-sided buildings, so to speak, that the back edges of those buildings become really critical from that standpoint as well. So about 95% of your sidewalks meet the minimum width, that 5-foot minimum width. You have some ADA compliance issues. You can see the slide on the lower right where there's a sidewalk that just leads to a curb. There are a few small issues like that. For the most part, your sidewalk network is in fairly good shape. But there are some really critical gaps. So as we get into concepts, we'll be looking at where we have gaps in sidewalks and walking infrastructure and the experience of place, all layered together. And tree canopy, sidewalks, ground layer, green ground cover, all makes a big difference in the way people experience it. So I think this is, and this gets more to some of those gaps in areas also, but it's a good diagram because it does illustrate where we have some of those gaps in the sidewalk network that we'll be focusing in on. So these two really go together, this one and this one, in looking at where the gaps are. The next one, a robust bike network, is a major bonus. The fact that you have a regional trail traveling through your downtown obviously is huge. You all know that. It is a major bonus, a large bonus for you, and something that we really think can be leveraged through this planning process. So obviously, this diagram suggests that about a little less than $800 million in economic activity comes to Minnesota because of its bike infrastructure and its recreational biking. So stronger ways of leveraging the facility you have traveling through the community is really a key factor in some of the things we'll be looking at. There are really 3 points of entry into the downtown district from the bike infrastructure that you do have. 2 of those are the regional trail, and 1 of those is Broadway. And I think we'll be exploring possibilities for expanding the number and the character and quality of those entryways as a component of what we'll be looking at with concepts. This illustrates some of the crossings, and it gets to, or it speaks to the comfort and the perceptions of safety that people have in using both the trails, as well as folks in their vehicles who are crossing the trails. So you can see a few unmarked crossings in this area of the regional trail, and where Broadway comes in again. So this is, I think, a really important one also. Again, this illustrates in that reddish or pink tone areas where there just is no bike network or bike facilities coming into the downtown area. So making that trail work for Forest Lake means that we need to think, I think, really strategically and smartly about how to expand bike facilities and bike access from the regional trail into the downtown core. And not only kind of inform people who are on the trail about how to make their way from the trail into downtown, but provide those facilities that are essential to getting bikers into the community. This one gets at lighting within the downtown area. And the only thing I want to highlight here is you can see the dots, the yellowish or tan dots represent pedestrian lights or light fixtures in the downtown area. And again, if you squint, sometimes it's easiest to squint at these images, but you can see that there is a more dense pattern of lights east of Highway 61 or Lake Street and a less dense pattern of lighting to the west. And I think that becomes really important in looking at parking strategies, because there may be strategies that are put in place that put more, for instance, employee parking west of Highway 61, or suggest how to develop that, in exchange for more intensity of customer parking east of 61, as an example. So lighting becomes a real strong asset or component of that. This looks at points where we're lacking some of the pedestrian crossings. The red dots are unmarked crossings. And I think when we did our walk a number of weeks ago, maybe a couple of months ago, crossing Lake Street is really an issue. The roundabout is probably not as friendly as it needs to be or should be. So we're going to be looking at strategies for enhancing pedestrian crossings at that primary intersection of Broadway and Lake, and how we create much stronger pedestrian crossings of Lake Street, and in some cases, ancillary streets or crossing streets as well. So you can look forward to that. Next layer is private properties. So real estate should be a good investment. I think that goes without saying, but sometimes that doesn't happen in downtown districts. So we want to be looking at the real estate and making sure that it truly is a good investment and doing what is necessary to make it one. The business district should attract people, buildings should contribute, and links to surrounding neighborhoods support business and generate continual activity. So those are the four key topics that we see as important to highlight as part of the analysis with private properties. I want to mention one thing with that last bullet point, links to surrounding neighborhoods. What we've discovered and found working with other communities is that when there's a focus in initial stages of uplifting a downtown district, when there's a focus on making the linkage and the connections to the immediately surrounding neighborhoods, it creates, number one, the most logical connection of constituency to the downtown core, but it also creates a buzz around folks who view downtown as their downtown, and they establish greater and greater pride in it. They talk to others about the fantastic nature of downtown Forest Lake, and it's something that really spreads in a grassroots way. And so links to surrounding neighborhoods is a step one in creating stronger ties to the surrounding communities and the region. So that's kind of the way we view this tiered approach or staged approach to thinking about uplifting downtown and those strong connections and the importance of them. So land value. This is identifying overall land value, and the takeaway points are small parcels. And I want to touch on this condoization of parcels because I think that's really important. And it's something that is helpful in our view to downtown because it's a pathway to ownership of the downtown core for business owners or folks who are interested in investing in a smaller component of downtown. So many of those areas you see in red are actually condoized properties. And that is a pathway into ownership of the downtown, and that's important. It's a good thing. However, it can make redevelopment more challenging because of multiple acquisitions. And you can say that about both condoization of properties as well as small parcels. There are a lot of small parcels in downtown Forest Lake. And that, I'm sure, has been and will continue to be a challenge to some redevelopment efforts. This next one is building value. And again, those kind of same, that same issue or topic applies to the benefits of condo or condoized properties in the downtown area. I'll mention one other thing also, and that's that the assessed value for buildings along 61 are reasonable for redevelopment. In other words, they are probably at a price point that's low enough to encourage redevelopment. But that probably also means that there hasn't been a lot of recent investment and reinvestment in those properties, some of them. So that speaks, I think, to people's willingness and interest in investing in those properties the way they are. They may be waiting for redevelopment. The rents may not establish a baseline to allow for reinvestment. We're not sure exactly why, but there's something to be telling us in that issue, in that topic. So this is a diagram of vacant parcels or parcels that don't have buildings on them. Most vacant parcels east of 61 are public or public space, the park included, or parking or association lands. They're more likely to be redevelopment possibilities in the future. And I just want to highlight the quadrant to the southwest of the roundabout as something that I think needs to be a focus of this downtown plan. Obviously, it's vacant and it has some real access issues, but it's something that is an important high visibility site for the community. So this one is about building frontage and the types of uses that are within those buildings. If we extrapolate the use as kind of the depth of the building and pull it right to the front, this becomes a really important topic in the way people and customers experience downtown. So if you focus in on this diagram of the red frontages, those are the retail frontages, and those are the uses within those frontage types that are going to potentially draw folks to stroll through the downtown. People who are experiencing a downtown really like loops. They want to be able to experience storefronts in a loop pattern. Doesn't always happen. If you think of downtown Stillwater, there's very little looping. It's all to one side of the street. So it's not a hard and fast rule, but in general, communities that have a loop opportunity for strollers or shoppers experience a more robust opportunity kind of as a whole within the district. And again, if you squint and take a look at this map, the area between, in the block between Broadway and to the north, there's fairly strong retail frontage in that area on the east side. Only a couple of opportunities or retail frontages on the west side. So folks who might be inclined to go to a shop on the east side are probably not inclined to walk past other storefronts to get to those on the west side. And that is something that we can look at from a building frontage or a building type or redevelopment standpoint, as well as a facilities and streetscape character and design aspect as we look at the plan. If downtown Forest Lake is more than a one-block experience, the area to the south would be the most likely possibility, but there's very little retail frontage in that block to the south. So it's very, you would think, and I think the reality bears this out, that folks who are traveling to any of the storefronts south of Broadway are pretty much probably driving there, going to whatever shops or stores they're interested in as far as their destination, and then driving somewhere else. It is not a walking experience. And that block to the north provides the most opportunity for a walking experience, but it has a lot of missing teeth that is important to address as we go forward. So that's the main piece of this particular diagram, and I think it is really telling about where the opportunities lie. So this one really is just an inventory of buildings, and we have it and want to make sure that you have it in front of you as well, but there's nothing for me to review necessarily. So this next set of slides I think is really interesting. So you can see the diagram in the map. The study area itself is kind of the blue arrow that you see. The 5-minute zone around downtown is in red. The 10-minute zone is in green, and the 20-minute zone is in blue. And these are drive times, not walk times. So you're going to see how we look at that kind of throughout. So if you look at spending by people living within the study area, retail spending and then food and drink spending is on the right. You can see the amounts of spending that happens from those folks within those districts. That doesn't mean spending downtown. You'll see that in a minute, but that is spending overall. When you look at the overall numbers of spending within the drive area, the actual amount of study area sales is that 28 million in retail and 2.9 million or 3 million in food and drink. So as a percentage, you can see kind of the relationship between the two. The next one looks at study area sales, again, for retail and food and drink. And the amount of retail that happens within the downtown district is a whole lot more than can be supported by certainly the study area. You can see that percentage is 800 and some percent. So there are a lot of folks coming into downtown, many folks coming into downtown to shop as well as to eat and drink beyond those who live in the study area. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. If you look at the percentage within a 5-minute drive, that percentage drops substantially. So that means folks who live within a 5-minute area are getting 3/4 or so of their retail and food shopping done elsewhere than downtown. Folks who live within the 10-minute area are getting 94 or 5% of what they need outside of downtown. And folks who are within a 20-minute circumference or area are getting 99% of what they need aside from downtown. So you can say, you could look at this and say, wow, that's a bummer, I wish it were more. Or you can look at it as a lot of green grass. We have a lot of opportunity to move the needle just a little bit and have a really substantial impact. And this gets to the experiential quality of what people are wanting out of a shopping experience or a dining experience, and whether or not they're getting it in downtown Forest Lake. So we look at this and say, you have got a lot of opportunity to make some strategic, targeted investments that are going to have some major impact on how people perceive and use your downtown district. So I think I covered all of these points, but the study area restaurants capture about 14% of the restaurant spending within a 5-minute drive time, and 3% of the restaurant spending within a 10-minute drive time. So again, it just speaks to how much opportunity there is to make some impact. And finally, the last layer is this downtown activation. And the 2 points that we want to make there are that regular happenings attract people. You know that. And you do a lot with downtown events and activities, and it's really great. And also parking should be convenient and easy. And we see parking as an activation issue because the experience of people going from their cars to the shop or store or restaurant that they're headed to is a point of activation in and of itself. And activation will be enhanced by either wayfinding or really strategically locating parking within the downtown district. Yeah, won't cover that necessarily, but the things that you've got are, you've got the 4th of July, you've got the Flake Festival, Hometown Holiday, Arts in the Park. You've got a lot of things going on from an event standpoint. We wonder whether there are activities that could relocate to downtown. Maybe they're happening elsewhere in the community. Would they find downtown as a possibility for events? And then also, what are the everyday activities and occurrences and small-scale events that are happening to draw folks all season long, all year round? And that becomes a really important component, both seasonality and for-season activities, as well as small things that are happening on a really regular basis, aside from the larger events. So we'll be looking at that a lot. Parking should be convenient and easy. We know that parking is going to be a really critical aspect of the strategies and ideas that we generate as part of this effort. Parking is probably your most strategic decision. And too much parking is a buzzkill, too little is a hassle, and wrongly locating it is just kind of a waste of resources. So we see it as a really important aspect of helping you think about this topic and discuss this topic and bring up ideas and thoughts as we go through the effort. So a few points on parking. Existing parking for uses along 61 is primarily oriented to the rear of those properties. Parking lots between the 61 buildings and the lake have a tendency to affect the user experience, probably both for the folks in the building as well as those at Memorial Park. So that parking, as strategically located as it is and important as it is, it can also have negative aspects to it. And we need to think about that, how we're mitigating some of those issues. We know that boat and trailer parking is a challenge downtown and something that we need to address. And Highway 61 creates a barrier, making it really challenging to use west side parking lots. So that gets back to issues of street crossing, lighting, security, and perceptions of safety that people have in the downtown area. And then seasonal use. Seasonal use, whether it's, again, boating and trailer parking, or the events, and all the folks who are enjoying the lake. So that is the range of slides that I've got. I'd really love to open it up to discussion, questions among all of you. We know that we're going to go back to most of these slides and make changes or updates and tweaks and have them ready to load up to the website in a week or so based on your comments as well as based on just kind of continual refinement of these. So any thoughts that any of you have, we'd love to hear it. And I'll turn it back to you, Mayor.
Thank you, Bruce. Members, let's just open it up. Questions at this point, just items of discussion?
I just have, this is just a clarification. When you talk about the essentials needed for the bike path, what does that mean?
Bike parking, routes that are designated off the trail into downtown, clear gateways at the trail edge signifying downtown this way.
Okay.
So wayfinding becomes a really important aspect of that. Services for bikes like water, maybe a bike repair station, things like that. So all of those become aspects, either a public space or a private operation within the community or within the downtown district that both sends a signal as well as in reality supports bike use in the downtown core. We know, for instance, that folks who have really high-end bikes They do not want to leave their bike locked up somewhere where they can't see it. So how is bike parking being handled throughout the downtown area if they're coming in for food or drink? Is there convenient and visual bike parking adjacent to destinations that they would have?
I had a similar question on, you mentioned the walk score was 17. Can you go back to that slide?
Yep, absolutely.
One of my questions was, is that just for the downtown core, or is that Forest Lake overall?
That's just the downtown core.
And what does that 17 mean? And maybe the slide had some context there.
So, oh, excuse me, I think that is the city as a whole. I apologize. I think that's the community as a whole.
Is there an ability to get that score?
I'll try,
downtown? Okay.
yeah.
And what does 17 mean? Is
It means that it's
100
a
good,
car
17?
dependent.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a
okay.
car dependent community.
And what factor is part of the future analysis on specific factors or opportunities investments we could make to increase? I'd be interested in to know those kind of key
Yep.
factors. And
So it has to do with proximity and infrastructure primarily. So in other words, what within, and I'll go back to the neighborhood surrounding
Yeah,
downtown,
yeah.
because they're the folks who have the opportunity to have a 10-minute walk from their home to the downtown. Do they have the infrastructure in place to be able to walk? Because they have the proximity, we know that. So for them, it's a proximity issue, excuse me. For folks who are a little bit farther out, it's both. It's proximity and infrastructure. So it's where housing within the downtown core obviously is the easiest way to create both.
right.
Because you've got folks that are right there. And within your downtown core, you have pretty good walking infrastructure. It's pretty good. There are some gaps, but it's pretty good.
Helpful. Thank you. Blake, go ahead.
So I always tend to agree with you on the bike thing. I know that's a big trend, but I'm surprised that nothing to yet has been talked about the marina and what the lake and generation dollars that are being brought in, that can be brought in with additional marina space, trailer parking and that. So when will that be talked about? And I'm just a little bit surprised it hasn't been talked to at this point.
Oh, I think that's
When
great.
you're bringing biking into it, I think that the dollars that could be generated by marina and boating and that probably are equal, if not much higher than the bike.
So let's talk about it now and really kick off that discussion, and we'll do some background analysis on it as well. So obviously, marina use it brings in a whole host of economic activity. And the negative aspect of that, I suppose, if there is one, is the pressure that it puts on downtown parking, especially more boat trailer parking. So,
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Just layer into that the consideration of the Forest Lake is a residential lake, and so there is a contingent of, there's a population that can be served without car access,
right,
but needing adequate, so just wanted to layer in that residential
transient
aspect.
docks and
Correct.
that kind of thing,
Correct.
yeah. Okay, we will dig into that and be ready to present it at the next meeting. Thanks for mentioning that.
Then, and just as long as I have the, one other thing, I also agree, the tree canopy, very important, it's key, it makes people more comfortable when they're out and about. And Forest Lake, when we redid the street, the Broadway in 61, 10, 12 years ago or whatever it is, they did a nice job of bringing that in, but I think that the city is doing a poor job of maintaining that, or the county. There are, even in some of these slide pictures, you can see some trees that are just struggling greatly, and I think that we need to, as a city, to focus on that and see how we need to better maintain that, the ones that we have, and then increase canopies.
There's some really great new technologies and strategies for getting trees in urban environments to be robust. And so we'll be introducing those as part of the process too.
Then go ahead.
Two things. One, you said that you've started community engagement, and I'm kind of tapped in and I'm looking for things like this, but I haven't seen anything yet.
Okay.
So I'm wondering what your strategies are for doing community engagement and getting answers to your questionnaire and things like that. And then Hugo is just exploding with residential, and we've got this great bike trail, and more families are wanting to do a relatively short bike, even though you can go from Minnetonka to Taylor's Falls along our trail. There is a huge economic potential there for us to be able to capture some of those folks evenings and weekends. And I guess one of my, as I observe people, the folks that are using the lake and the marinas that are coming in from other places that aren't on the lake, they're bringing their coolers and they're bringing their stuff and they're bringing their tackle and they're pretty self-contained. What are the things that we could maybe do to say, you don't have to do that, you can get everything you want for your boat day here instead?
Only bike day? Is
Yeah,
that what you mean?
But actually,
Boat or
building
bike?
on Blake's opportunities to have economic drivers that use, that those folks that are using boats, but those are sort of the same thing that the people on bikes are not gonna be bringing their whole cooler. So how can we develop things that will encourage people to either have when they're taking their bike trip, to stop off and use things, and then not say, yeah, well, I have to bring all my stuff with me for my day on the lake.
Well, I think anytime there's a new industry or a new activity coming into a district, it's a little bit of a ramp-up period. So the community in public realm or in public spaces can do things like bike repair stations, bike lockers, bike racks, provide water for bikers, little things that are going to allow them to comfortably get off the trail and come into the community. That will in turn create potentially a market that others, entrepreneurs, are going to see and think about. Maybe Forest Lake is a great spot for me to open a bike shop, to open an outfitter, to rent bikes, to do other things. And I think what we would want to try and accomplish with this effort is to lay the groundwork for how that evolutionary process begins. In the case of bikes, as an example. Boating, you have a strong history in it, and maybe it's a matter of focusing in more on the connectivity, this notion of transient slips and getting people who are coming from the residential surroundings into the downtown, make it more convenient, make it operate better within the business district as far as trailer parking. Some of those kinds of strategies maybe is our best approach to that. Rita, I'm going to ask you if you would come up and talk in a little more detail about the community engagement aspects. Thank you.
I'll just find a microphone.
Okay.
So, thank you, because I was hoping you were going to give me a chance. So to your point on community engagement, we have just put up on, I believe it's the EDA site, technically, the link to get to the information about the downtown plan on the interactive website. It's only been up for less than a week, and so you can take a look at it. We'll make sure that we get the information out. Dan is going to be working on putting a link from the city's main page to that website, and then we're going to start doing the community engagement that you would see out in the community. We wanted to get the electronic one up first for a few reasons. One is it's there, so if we're out in the community and they see us and they talk to us and they want to go home and look at more things online, then they have it and there'll be some energy already on the website before we do the in-person. I also wanted to wait because we're all just transitioning for the in-person engagement, Art in the Park, and get that to be a little more established before we start showing up and trying to encourage things and have people be out. So the plan is to do that in July and maybe in August, so that, again, it's kind of the strategy of building upon each other, and Dan just brought up the link. So that's the EDA website. You can see there's a word wall and an interactive map. And that's what those two look like. And you can, the word wall is just tell us a word that you would use to describe downtown. It's really quick, it's really easy. But but it's a way of doing something easy for folks. And then the map, which is the lower one, there's 4 different icons, and you bring them down and you can provide a comment about those topics. We use this extensively. People like it. I would love it if you would go out and start adding dots, because it's just like everything, we just need people to add some comments, and then it'll start happening. But nobody really wants to be the first one. Even though your name and your email doesn't show up, everybody's always a little nervous. So if you can go out and take a look and add some, that'll help generate other folks to participate. And then, as I said, we'll start going out and doing the more in-person engagement, but I want this established before we do that, because the hope would be you walk away with a little business card that says, go to this website, add more thoughts, because when you're doing those events, people won't have enough time to really engage with you.
Thought about it.
Yeah, exactly. So this will be, that's why it's kind of a tandem approach to doing it. And then if you have ideas of more events, or you have more things that you think we could do, we're certainly open and interested in hearing what those might be. Flyers in the businesses downtown could work. We can do the cards when we do stakeholder interviews that that the people that you're meeting with. I mean, there's different ways of doing it, but it does take also your help in kind of getting the word out to folks that you know. Hopefully we're making it easy enough that, and everybody's kind of moved virtually over the last year, so it shouldn't be so intimidating as it used to be. So does that work? Any other ideas?
That helps.
Awesome. Great. I'll stay here till.
Go ahead, Finn. Go ahead, Finn.
Can we go back to the map of your downtown contained area?
Which one, Mark?
Oh, almost any of them would work for me, just as long as you show
Almost
the
any of them?
constraints. That's just fine.
Okay.
I always find we've limited you greatly in the context of the area that you're working with, and I always have this urge to push just beyond the bounds of what's going on here. There are properties or non-use areas just beyond some of these limits that will probably be a big piece of consideration for how you move in and transition to this territory. I know you're thinking beyond those limits, but it might actually help to take the diagramming a little bit further away and let it bleed away into the distance.
We'll do it.
The very north end of town, do you find any oddity up there in terms of how we've kind of called that limit? The territory just south of Matson's funeral home has a lot of the same characteristics as the territory that's just north of Matson's funeral homes and those condominiumized pieces there. And then there's a little notch that came out of there too that's probably a rental piece of property and will transition. So I'm just wondering if, because the world is so much the same north of Matson's as it is south, maybe it should be a piece of the thinking, because whatever you think can happen south could potentially happen north in the 10 to 20 years, thought pattern.
Well, we certainly will kind of bleed this edge out so that it's easier to see areas that are closer to the boundary, and then conduct, some of our analysis on those areas beyond the boundary as well.
Okay, because I do think that north edge probably line could be cut differently than it is, and
Okay.
more cleanly than just that little notch that comes out.
Got it. Okay.
Questions? Oh, go ahead. Bob.
Comment on lake use. We see that the more the lake is used, the less business we get. Because people bring in the big coolers, they take up all the parking, they go out and bowl, they tired when they come back in, and then they go home. We've had 2 weekends where we've had 0 people in the restaurant because they've been using.
Interesting. Okay.
So just a comment.
So I throw out a speculation on the, I mean, this might be a personal draw, because there's a lot I don't know. I presume that the boat club is bringing in enough strength so that it wants to grow. That's something that's showing up to people. And I don't know personally whether the boat parking and the access to the lake, if could be solved another way, might be a more enhanced territory for either moving the boat club down toward where the boat landing is, gaining more of a green sense, green to blue water sense of what's there instead of the marina, and would also challenge that parking to maybe free up a little bit if in fact the landing and all the people in and out on their boat and trailers is a greater benefit than maybe getting that stuff back for parking and or park or relaxation there.
Okay.
So I don't know how you actually determine that other than DNR saying we're good with what we've got elsewhere, we don't need this one, And then the business is saying, we're not really getting that much of an attribute out of the in and off the lake.
People coming in.
That we really could maybe keep that as winter access to the lake, but maybe we could just relax that territory. I know it would have helped development over the years if they thought that hadn't been there, and they could have utilized that parking more efficiently for the businesses or the residents that might have come.
Got it, great. I'll just mention also, Reed is taking good notes, by the way, so we're capturing all of your comments.
Mara, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
My concern, or at least a question, first of all, I've always agreed with the bicycle concept. We've talked about that many, many times here at the council and beyond. Well, let's not forget about winter. And we make sure that we integrate these activities that can be kind of meshed together at one time or another for parking, and are we gonna be snowmobile friendly, that kind of thing. And I think that would help the businesses, particular restaurant or bar or whatever, that kind of thing too. So
Yeah.
just so we don't forget about that concept the other 4 months of the year.
I really like that comment about snowmobiles. To me, it's really similar to the boating issue. We should be looking at that, so we will.
Sam, there are times at the log cabin when there's more snowmobiles parked there than there are cars.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I want to make sure that happens. Maybe we can make that work for our downtown too. Yeah. There's got to be a way of, that not all of them are rebels. I mean, they're just people out for a ride. If we could make that more friendly and we'd help our downtown businesses, I think.
Great, okay.
Jerry, go ahead.
So I have three questions and maybe comments. So first of all, if I can just address the snowmobile thing for a second, because I am an avid snowmobiler and part of the Forest Lake Snowmobile Club. Forest Lake is not considered a friendly snowmobile destination.
Interesting.
So, and that has been going on for years. So if we want Forest Lake to be a snowmobile-friendly destination, we have to find some ways for access on and off the lake to Hardwood Creek, and then from Hardwood Creek to the businesses. That's why it's not a snowmobile-friendly place, because people can't go anyplace.
Same issue as for the bicycles.
Same issues with the bicycles, right. Snowmobile is a little more complicated because of conditions and stuff like that, but it is definitely something that needs to be considered. Secondly, I thought, there are certain things we as a city can control relative to the redevelopment. One of my questions for you in your planning process, are you intending to have any discussions with Washington County regarding their plan for Hardwood Creek?
Well, we certainly can. I did not know that Washington County had necessarily additional plans, so.
I don't know that,
That's
but
good
they are,
piece of
but they are the owner, and they're the ones that redeveloped Hardwood Creek here a number of years ago. I was involved with them on some things relative to accesses off of Hardwood Creek for people to get off, signage and so forth like that. I just think it'd be positive for us to know what their thoughts are on a 10, 15-year plan for Hardwood Creek, for us going down one path, and they have a completely different idea over here.
We will do that.
And then the other part of that would be a lot of discussion about US 61 and access across 61, to get to the east side of 61. Again, do you normally have any discussion with MnDOT planners?
MnDOT is on our list.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. And then thirdly, or fourthly, I guess, relative to the amount of boat traffic and the issues of boating on Forest Lake, because of the pandemic, it actually has caused almost a 30% increase in the amount of boat traffic on Forest Lake. And, we were a lake that people didn't come up to before the pandemic because it was like, well, it's too far away. Plus, a lot of people don't have boats. Forest Lake has become a destination for boaters. There are a lot of people now that have found Forest Lake to be a great lake to come up for the day to go boating. And so I don't ever expect that significant increase of transient boaters to change in years to come, because they have found out that Forest Lake is a great lake to come to. And so something we have to think about in our 10, 15, 20-year planning. We were this quiet little lake that people didn't come to. Now they are coming.
Are there boat clubs operating on Forest Lake?
Yes.
It's Your Boat
Okay.
Club is the only one there, and there's another called Tim's Marina down on Highway 97 down there, but that's the only two.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And They have made requests for expansion, the boat club.
They have, okay.
Yes. And they operate right at the dock, right at Lakeside Memorial.
Yeah.
Other questions? Ryan, go ahead.
I'll just make myself available when you guys have time through the plan to talk about future cooperative agreement projects that are happening within the city with the county and states that are bringing significant amount of pedestrian improvements with them. So in 2024, we have one with Washington County. That's a north-south route. That's far away from here, but it is going to provide off-street trail. And then 2024, MnDOT's working on Highway 97 to provide a 10-foot trail on the south side of that would connect out to the Divergent Diamond and then into the Hard Creek Trail too. And then 2026, where there will be some nice connection opportunities with the road just right here, County State Aid Highway 32, and a potential trailhead area, you know, right there with the Hard Creek Trail too, so that would be reconstructing that. So those are 3 local projects that are coming with significant amount of improvements plus pedestrian improvements. But the big one that's still chasing some money and the final scope of the project is not quite unknown is the Highway 8. But if they get everything fully funded that they're wanting to build and envisioning, that would extend the Swedish Immigrant Trail all the way down and connect to the Hard Creek Trail.
Nice.
Now all of a sudden you got bikers such as Dan that could bike all the way to work on regional trail opportunities. And speaking with Washington County, we're trying to change some trail designations with them on regional trails so we can chase separate funding opportunities, because right now their farthest regional trail in their comprehensive plan is farther south where we'd want it, kind of in the middle of nowhere between Hugo and Forest Lake. And we're like, can we move it up or make another tier ring so we can chase some of that opportunity to help bring in more networking into the community. But anytime you guys need to go over some of those potential projects, we can provide you with some information on that too.
Great, okay.
And I did look up the snowmobile stuff because I know that was a big question with the Divergent Diamond project, because a lot of snowmobiles used to cross that old highway bridge that had some sort of a shoulder. And I know a lot of snowmobilers use that Polaris Ride Command app, and there's not even a route within Forest Lake now. It just shows you jetting into Third Lake on the east side, but everywhere around. So obviously, you know, if you're a guy that's not familiar with this area and you follow that Ride Command app, that's, I think, do you ever use it? Do you use that snowmobile app?
Yeah, a lot of snowmobilers use it.
And it doesn't even show you coming to Forest Lake.
It's considered, Forest Lake is considered a unfriendly
Right.
snowmobile destination.
Interesting.
We gotta fix
So it also has ATV mapping on that, so it's free. You could download it and just look at that to see what's in the area.
Great,
So
nice.
Yeah, they pack up by the end of my driveway.
The Divergent Diamond that Ryan's referring to is the new bridge that's at 97 and
Okay.
35, so. Other questions? One of the slides you had showed the mix between food and beverage and retail. And I have it in my head that one feeds the other, so if someone comes for food and beverage and maybe stays for retail and vice versa. Is that the mix that we have today, is that desirable mix between food and beverage and retail? Or are there benchmarks that we would look to move the needle? And maybe that's not a question for today, but that was just something I
Okay,
saw and struck. I'd be interested in knowing, is that an optimal mix, or do we have not enough retail to support future food and beverage? Or I'd just be interested in what does that look like, and then what that helps to kind of designate, you know, land use, and what part of that might need some promoting versus what's just naturally.
we'll come back with a look at that question.
That's good, thank you. Other questions for today? Quick comment about just the website that I noticed. I love that it's on the Invest in Forest Lake site. Let's just make sure that it's easily accessible from a cityoforrestlake.com and splashed all over, because I think it's also, you know, there's an EDA page on the cityoforrestlake.com, and then there's the forestlake.com front page. As we're ready, and it sounds like we're at the spot where we're ready for people to actually be accessing that, let's make sure that that's a quick link. I love that we've got the Invest in Forest Lake site for external, you know, purpose, people looking to invest, but I'm not sure that it's the go-to for residents.
And can that get connected to the chamber, or is it already?
when we're ready, let's just make that a standard feature for weekly newsletter and all of the typical communication channels. Sounds like now we're at that spot where we're ready to start getting that published. As we can link that to the chamber and certainly other sources as well. Fabulous. Any particular next steps we want to outline before we adjourn for the evening? Oh, Susan?
Just one last question. How much value with other communities have you found for cities that are trying to get more folks coming to their city for the statewide, that gives the, I'm not sure how to describe it. I get an email that says, here's what's happening in Lanesboro, or here's a neat place to go in Lindstrom, or other communities that are part of the Tourism Minnesota. That's what I
Or
want to.
Minnesota?
Tourism Minnesota.
Yeah. Is that a value to communities? Because I know that we're not eligible to be part of that at this time.
Well, I think it's really valuable to communities who have assets and experiences that are kind of statewide significance. So Lanesboro has the Root River Trail, because that is what it is, along with the Arts District in Lanesboro. They've established that. There's ramp-up time, there's evolutionary time, I think, involved in getting to that point. So next steps for us, we are beginning now the process of looking at trends, as I mentioned, both regional and national trends that would affect the way we think about downtown Forest Lake. We will also be refining and incorporating your ideas into the analysis work. And as soon as we get that analysis piece to a point where we feel like it's ready for prime time, we're going to go ahead and load that to the website so anyone can access that. And then we'd like to come back and present again to you at the end of July. I think the 24th.
Yeah, it sounds right.
Yeah, whatever the date is.
That is our next scheduled,
Yeah.
meeting. We'll have it here in just a second. Yeah, July 26th would be
Great.
our next scheduled workshop date.
And we'll be doing
Terrific.
a lot of stakeholder interviews and work with other agencies and local stakeholders around that, as well as beginning our engagement with community events. So you'll see us at some events.
Fantastic. Members of the EDA Downtown Committee, anything further this evening or other questions?
I've just got a comment. When you talk about stakeholders, I had mentioned before, looking at bringing potential stakeholders in to look at us, not the people currently here. Did you see the big sign in Hugo? That Hugo, on you guys, driving through Hugo, going north, great big huge sign where the restaurant burned down, said that Hugo is revitalizing their town. And if you're interested, contact them. I think we should be looking at going outside and talking about, okay, what do you want in our downtown? And of course, I'm specifically looking for anything to do with the arts, gallery space, studio space, that kind of thing. And looking to people in Stillwater that maybe can't afford the rents in Stillwater, what we could offer them if they came here. When you're talking about the condo.
Yeah, we do have that programmed in the next stage of our project, of the downtown study.
Okay.
For now, stakeholders represents a lot of communication with downtown businesses, folks who are either living, operating things within the downtown area. So it is looking at the core, but I like the idea of going out also. So we'll find a way to make that happen earlier in the process than we otherwise would. Absolutely.
Along those lines, some sort of, when we're ready for, whenever the right time is, some sort of press release, or some sort of an article to just talk about the plan and to invite further comment, I think might also fit well.
And we've written that press release. It's in
Fabulous.
the hands of city
Fabulous.
staff.
Good.
Yep.
All right, that,
I have a question.
oh, go ahead.
And that is, at what point are we starting to talk to businesses and how can I help facilitate that process?
Great, beginning right after the 4th of July.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I like that answer.
Do you have contact information that I could get from you? All right, good deal.
All right, well, that is a good segue to wish everyone a fantastic and safe 4th of July. And we are adjourned. We'll see everyone for EDA next meeting. And we're adjourned.